Let's talk the color. One more thing, like, subscribe and share. Come on, let's talk the color. Woo!
There we go. Good evening, everybody. Hey, it's Cutler here, the Let's Talk the Cutler broadcast, the Let's Talk the Cutler virtual book club, the Let's Talk the Cutler vlog, the Let's Talk the Cutler channel. And it is a Thursday, and we're ready for these 1,800 seconds that we're going to spend together. So let me just give you a brief, a beef. No, I'm not giving anybody beef. I'm not beefing or anything, but let me just give you a brief background on what this channel is all about. Just in case this is your first time, this channel is about inspiration and motivation. It's about challenging ourselves to show up a little bit better tomorrow than we did today. It's about challenging ourselves to make sure that we showed up better today than we did yesterday. It's about reaching a space and a place that's called better and making sure that we don't show up by ourselves. It's about recognizing the potential that we have. It's about making those extra efforts to recognize our victories and our successes and those wonderful things. So if this is your very first time tuning in or stopping by, do me a favor, go ahead and subscribe. Just subscribe. Go ahead and subscribe. And then after you subscribe, do me another favor. Just go one step further and click on the notification bell, because the notification bell lets you know whenever I've gone live, whenever I've uploaded new content. And I want to make sure that you all keep up with what I'm doing. Then for tonight's conversation, if you've been following me for the past week or so, you'll remember that we've been talking about how to better express yourself, how to improve your self-expression. We are going to continue in that vein this evening, because one of the things that I know is that most people want to be effective communicators. And a lot of times we ask ourselves, make efforts, but sometimes we kind of fall by the wayside. And what I've been doing for the past couple of sessions, the past couple of times together, is just to offer us some assistance in that area. So I want you all to think about that. I want you to think about it. And I want you to invite some people who may not be the best at expressing themselves, may not be the best at communicating, or even if it is you yourself, I invite you to just tune in, do a thumbs up on the conversation, because I'm putting in extra effort to make sure that we all become just a little bit better at self-expression, making sure that we clearly communicate, making sure that we are heard and seen and experienced and understood. I want to make sure that we master our interactions with other people. So let's go on and continue with our conversation. Why don't we do that? But before I do that, I want to acknowledge the LTTC VIPs. Now, if you're stopping by for the first time and you're wondering what in the world is an LTTC VIP, an LTTC VIP, it is a Let's Talk the Cutler very important person. Everybody is important, but the LTTC VIP status sort of promotes friendly competition to see who is going to get in the chat room first, because I tend to acknowledge the first 3 people that I see on my end hopping into the chat room. Now, I know some people will say, I made it in the chat room first. My computer shows that I'm in the chat room first, but I can only go by what I see on this end, you all. So please forgive me if I ever don't acknowledge you, and on your end, you see that you hopped in the chat room first. Do me a favor, send me an email and tell me, and I'll make it up to you. All right, so I want to acknowledge the LTTC VIPs for this evening, and they are Annie Cutler, who says, let's ride. That's right, let's ride, because we're going someplace. My good friend, classmate Sylvia Clemens says hello to everyone. Hello to you, my friend. And then my good friend Paula D says hello, everyone. A special hello to you and to mom as well. Listen, let's get started. If you haven't done a thumbs up on the conversation, go ahead and do it, because it simply says to the folk at YouTube that you like what I'm talking about. It says to me, Cutler, I'm encouraged by your conversations. Let's continue the conversation wherein we were talking about how to better express yourself, how to become better at expressing yourself. I will not go through all of the tips that I've offered before. I encourage you to go back and catch the previous broadcasts that we held, and the ones where we had an intense conversation about some of the tips that I offered, but I'll start off with, there have been several, but I'll go back and start off with the very last one that we discussed before. If you want to become better at self-expression, the last thing we talked about when we were here was to make sure that you work on your delivery. Work on your delivery. That is important because I always encourage people not to let their mouth conflict with their motion. Don't let your mouth conflict with your emotion, with what you say, with your body, how you express yourself, how you show up, how you be. Make sure that there is parallel thought, parallel expression, parallel communication between the words that come out of your mouth and your body language. Don't let there be contradiction because people will become confused. What people see from you should complement what they hear from you. One of the most hypocritical things that there can be is a disconnect between what people see in your actions when it doesn't line up with what they hear from your mouth. That was the last thing we talked about. So I'll just toss it out there and then I'll keep on going. Now, I want to remind you that one of the things that we did when we first started talking about how to better self-express yourself was to make sure that we ranked ourselves on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being very low, 10 being very high. I asked you all, how would you rate or rank yourself in terms of your communication or in terms of your ability to express yourselves? We had 5s, 6s, 7s, 8s, and 9s. There were no 10s because, and I think that could have been because most of us see room for improvement in all that we do. We do see room for improvement in all that we do. But I'm hoping, it is my hope that as we complete this conversation tonight, we'll go back and we'll work on this. And whatever number we gave ourselves in the pre-test, we'll look a few weeks from now, a couple weeks from now, or maybe even next week and say, I've gotten a little bit better at that. That's what we mean when we say how to show up better tomorrow than we did today. Let there always be some nugget in your day. Let there always be some nugget in today that will empower you, that will improve you, that will enhance you, that will make you better tomorrow. That's what life is all about. That's what life is all about. I want to go to the next tip, the next helpful hint that I'd like to offer, and that is in terms of how to better express yourself. One of the things that I found to be true is that I sometimes have to challenge my assumptions. I really do, and I think in human nature, there are people who don't express themselves very well. Why? Because they worry a lot. Some people just worry a lot. They may not express themselves because they are so preoccupied with worrying. They create these exaggerated scenarios of failure in their head about how things will turn out. They assume the worst. They don't necessarily create an exaggerated scenario of success, but it always seems to be a failure. But if you want to become better at expressing yourselves, then learn how to challenge those assumptions. If you can assume the worst, why not assume the best? Because if you can make that assumption about the worst, understand that the best is just as possible as the worst. It's possible. And I think we've got to get to the point where we say, not only is the worst possible, but I have to remember that the best is possible as well. You will learn to realize that nothing is ever as bad as you think it's going to be. Have you ever been in a situation or a scenario or hypothetical or having an experience where you thought one thing, you thought the worst, you assumed the worst, and you actually saw the worst happening in your mind, but by the time you got to the conclusion of the whole matter, what you assumed as the worst, what you assumed as the final outcome, what you assumed as the totality of the situations and the circumstances, that is not what happened. And you almost want to wipe the sweat off your brow and say, I escaped that. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. How many of you have ever had that experience? May I put up both of my hands at the same time? I've had those experiences where I assumed the worst, but that's not what happened. And so one of the things that I want to encourage us to do tonight, if you're going to better express yourself, learn how to challenge the assumptions that we often have in our heads, in our hearts, in our minds. Learn how to challenge them and say to yourself that if I can assume the worst, why not assume the best? Because just as the worst outcome is possible, the best outcome is possible as well. Learn how to assume the best. That's all I'm saying. Learn how to assume the best. There are some people who are just who just somehow rain on their own parades, and they get caught up in that whole self-fulfilling prophecy where they think, woe is me, I'm never going to have, I'm never going to be, I'm never going to succeed, I'm never going to win, I'm never going to be victorious, I'm never going to fill in the blank. And we have to get beyond that and make the assumption that if the worst can happen, so can the best. And then start believing in the best. Start believing in the best. When I tell you that thing just spoke to me, start believing in the best. Whatever you do, start believing in the best. And that will help you better express yourself, because you will come from a positive vantage point. You will come from a positive perspective. You will not start in a pessimistic mode, but you will start optimistically. And you will believe that better and the best is possible. And not only that, in terms of how to better express yourself, I want you to challenge your assumptions, yes. But then remember this, you all, that when you stop talking, I've got to get this one out. When you stop talking, please just stop talking. Cutler, what are you talking about? Don't use filler words. One of my pet peeves, let me see how I can better put this. One of the most distracting things in a conversation for me is the continuous and unnecessary use of filler words. Filler words like ah, like, and you know, or whatever. Those are filler words. So I want to encourage us that when you stop talking, stop talking. You don't have to use filler words. You don't have to fill in every second, every moment with a sound. I find it difficult, and this is just me. I find it so difficult to focus on what people are saying sometimes when they use these repeated filler words. I'll tell you all of a true incident. I conducted an interview once with an individual who kept saying, and it wasn't subtle. It wasn't, it was, um. I conducted that interview through video chatting. So you know it was extra pronounced in this kind of setting. The individual kept saying, so loudly, so emphatically, until I'm just telling you all the truth. I started recording the conversation. I recorded the conversation for two reasons. Because I was distracted and I wanted to make sure that I gave the individual the benefit of the doubt by being able to go back and see what the individual has said in response to some of my questions where I was distracted. Well, I hired the individual, and after hiring the individual, I took the recording, shared it with the individual, and allowed the individual to invite me to do some coaching. The individual listened to the recording and had no idea that the words and and like were used so much. Cutler, how do we get around that? Especially when it's become habit, how do we get around that? There's several ways to get around it. The first one is to role play. The second one is to practice. Just practice. The third one is to write down. Get in the habit of writing down what you have to say. You all know, you've heard me say it so many times, that there's so much power in the pen. There are lots of benefits to writing things down. You learn not to fill in the blank. You learn not to fill in the space with unnecessary filler words. If you want to better express yourself, get rid of those filler words. When you stop talking, just stop talking and think. You don't have to fill up the space with or whatever. You know what I'm saying. You don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. Yes, Paul, a lot of people will use the phrase, you know, a lot. People will use this phrase the word like, especially some of my young people. Let me use it incorrectly for just a moment. In response to an interview question, an individual may say, "Well, I was like, you need to do that," and he was like, "Well, no, that's not the way to do it." So I was like, "Well, I'm going to do it this way," and he was like, drives me bananas. Drives me bananas. When you stop talking, stop talking. Don't use filler words. Think what you're going to say. Write it down if necessarily. If necessary, I just want to put that. I want to put that out there. I just want to put it out there. Feel free to share that with people in a constructive way. A lot of people are nervous, and that's why they use those filler words. I get it. I understand. One of the things that you will become is confident. And when you become confident, you don't feel the need to fill in every second with a sound. You become confident and even comfortable in silence. If you have a 2 second silent interval, you're just as comfortable with it. Why? Because your mind is still moving. You're still processing and you're okay with it. You're okay with you and you're okay with the moment. Learn to be okay with you in every moment where you sit, stand, and be. That's part of my offering to us tonight. Learn to be confident and okay with you in every moment where you sit, stand, and be. Thank you, Wendy. Absolutely an excellent idea. Reading literature can help us use other words instead of Absolutely. Absolutely. Another way, I won't harp on that too long, but learn how to empower yourselves with how you express yourselves. Learn how to empower yourselves with how you express yourselves, because based on how you express yourselves, people will make certain assumptions and draw conclusions about you. And you sometimes are in control to some degree of the kind of conclusion that they draw about you. Do your best to express yourselves excellently and then let their conclusions match up with the excellent way that you presented yourself. I just want to put that out there. Let's learn to become better self expressors. I just made that word up. Got another one for us this evening. If we're going to become better at expressing ourselves, you all, here's one of the things that I think is helpful for us to do. It is to open up incrementally. People feel better, people receive us better when we put ourselves in the position to identify with them, when we are empathetic. Don't be afraid to show vulnerability. Learn how to open up incrementally and don't be ashamed, or don't be afraid rather, to show vulnerability. It is okay to tell others a little bit about what's going on with you, a little bit about what's going on in your life. But as soon as I say that, may I throw out some cautions to us, not just cautions to the wind, but make sure that you learn to strike a balance between opening up and sharing too much information too soon. You've got to learn to strike the balance. It is subjective. It varies from person to person. Make sure you strike the balance between opening up and sharing too much information too soon. Cutler, why would you say that? I say that because we have to remember that there's nothing attractive about a person who is negative or consistently complains. And you don't want to be perceived as negative. You don't want to be perceived as consistently complaining. So you have to be careful about making sure that you strike the balance between opening up and sharing too much information too soon. Wait until you develop a rapport to some degree. And once you feel like you've established a rapport, then you can open up slowly. You can open up slowly. Cutler, do you have a suggestion? Yes, within the context and the confines of these 1800 seconds. Absolutely. Yes, I do have a suggestion. My suggestion is watch how the other person opens up and follow his or her lead. Watch how they open up and follow their lead. Even if you want to open up gradually and just put something small out there, see how they respond to you. And then follow suit, follow pattern. when you're unsure of how a person might interpret what you have to say, how they might translate what you have to say, how they might respond to what you have to say, only put out a little bit. Let them respond and then follow their lead. I got to keep going, you all. I hope this is very helpful because I wanted to make sure that I concluded our conversation tonight on how to better express yourself. Another way to better express yourself is to make sure, I say this so many times to some of my friends who are degreed and who have these enormous vocabularies. I say to them, make sure you use simple words. Use simple words. Why? Make it easy for people to relate to you. You want to be understood? Make sure you use simple words. Make it easy for people to relate to you. Hi, fabulous man. I'm glad you've enjoyed this. Good to see you. Listen, please catch the replay and let me know what you think about it. But again, use simple words. You want to be good, become better at expressing yourselves? Use simple words. Hey, Auntie, good to see you, my friend. I think it's wonderful. I love the fact that people are educated. I love the fact that people have extensive vocabularies. I enjoy that. But it does people no good to listen to you espousing your thoughts and all of that and using these words that they have no idea what they mean. They can't relate to you when you use all of those vocabulary words. And most of the time, as my grandma will say, 9 times out of 10, you know when you use a vocabulary word that people don't understand because they look at you with these blank faces. And it's not impressive. Don't use a lot of terms that are specific to a certain industry. I know, like the legal profession, the medical profession, and certain other professions, they seem to have their own vocabulary. Make sure you understand when you're not talking to people who are within that industry, within that profession. People, Cutler, why are you harping on that? I'm harping on that because people are not impressed by what they don't understand. And you are not becoming excellent at expressing yourselves when you're using words that people don't understand. Why would I say that? Because they are less impressed by you when you highlight their lack of knowledge. I wanted to say they are less impressed by you when you highlight their ignorance. And I don't mean ignorance in a negative connotation, but I mean ignorance with respect to what they don't know. Ignorance meaning what is not known. People are not impressed by what they don't understand. And they're less impressed by you. They're less impressed by me when we highlight what they don't know. And we'll lose them. They won't relate to us. They are repelled by us when we do that. And quite often I have to say that again to my friends who have these extensive vocabularies. And I think that's a wonderful thing, but it's not wonderful. It's not impressive when folk don't understand what you got to say. It's not. It's just not. Let me keep on going, you all. In terms of really learning how to better express yourself, here's something else that I want to offer us. And if this doesn't pertain to you, and I trust that it doesn't, but if it does, it's okay, because this is a non-judgmental platform. One of the things we've got to do in terms of if we're going to better express ourselves, don't make everything about you. Don't make it about you, because if you make it about you, you will forget them. If you're trying to express yourself to them, why make the conversation about you? Don't make everything about you. This is the God's truth, you all. I've seen people get upset about a post that they saw on social media because they somehow made somebody else's post about them. They didn't necessarily view the post as that person just venting or that person just sharing his or her experience. They somehow turned the content of the post and the context of the post and made it about them. Cutler, what do we say to people like that? Sometimes you've got to remind people that you're not that high on my priority list. And sometimes we have to remind ourselves, you know what? I'm not that high on his priority list. I'm not that high on her priority list for that post to be about me. That person was just venting. That person was just sharing. I'm telling you, we, we, we have got to make sure that when we are relating to them, we don't make the conversation about us. You will never become good at expressing yourself if you make every conversation about you. I've spoken with people, talked to people who, in the midst of a conversation, they somehow turn the conversation about them. And they made the conversation all about them. And what was I trying to do? There were some times when I sat there and I was trying to share my experience, trying to share what I was going through. And all of a sudden, the person with whom I was speaking turned the conversation to them, to their situation, their family, their dog, their house, their trip, their job. Whereas I was sharing. Make sure, if you're trying to be good or become better at self-expression, Auntie, what do you say? Oops, LOL. Fabulous me, the best way to judge the maturity of a person. I'm telling you all, look at how many times you talk to people and you're trying to share your experience and see if they turn it and make it about them. And see if ego jumps in and they suddenly make it about them. All right? I just offer that as food for thought. J-Song for you. Y'all know how grand we are to ourselves. Well, none of us. Right. So let's just be careful with that. That is one of the tips that sometimes challenges us. I know this channel is about motivation, it is about inspiration, but it's also about challenging ourselves. What good would it do for us to have these 1,800 seconds of conversation every Tuesday and Thursday, and we never find ourselves saying, oops, that's me, or I'm challenged by that. The inspiration and motivation, they are wonderful, but every now and then I would be untrue to myself if I didn't offer something that challenged us. And by us, I mean challenging myself as well. Here's something else that I want to offer us before I close this evening. If we're going to become better at expressing ourselves, you all keep practicing. Keep practicing. Like everything else, you get better the more you do it. The more you do it, the better you become. And I want to offer this to you. Don't you dare give up. Don't you dare give up, because we set so many goals for ourselves. We set so many hopes for ourselves. We have so many dreams for ourselves. Let expressing yourself better become one of them. And when expressing yourself better becomes a goal, hang in there. Don't dare give up on yourself. You are worth the work that you're going to invest in yourself. So don't stay isolated. Don't say, listen, I can't do this, Cutler. That was a nice conversation that we had. It sounded wonderful. It tickled my ears. And just for a moment, I wanted to applaud and say, man, that's a great conversation. But I'm telling you all this. Don't give up on yourself. Because, thank you, Juanita, because being challenged ain't fun, but it's needed for growth. I couldn't have said it better, my friend. Thank you for saying that. Don't stay isolated in your corner and say, Cutler, I can get with everything else that you said, but I can't get with that one. I'm just going to stay isolated and avoid it. This is one that we don't want to avoid. Learn how to become better at expressing yourself. Don't give up on you. Put in the work, make the effort, and put some sweat equity into this. It's just like going to the gym. You've got to do the reps. You've got to go and get started. You've got to learn how to strike up a conversation. Cutler, do you have a suggestion as to what we can do? Yes, as I close out these 1,800 seconds, here's what you can do. Put in the work. Believe in yourself. Don't give up on yourself. Keep practicing. Like everything else, the more you do it, the better you become. Go get started. Here is what I recommend. Here's what I suggest. Here's something you can do. Strike up a conversation in a low risk situation. What do you mean low risk? A low risk situation is one that's not going to last long. If you're standing outside when your mail is delivered, strike up a quick conversation with the postal deliverer. If you take your clothes to the dry cleaners, try and strike up a conversation. Strike up a conversation with the clerk, with the person at the dry cleaners for just a moment, because it's a low risk. It's a short time frame. You're not going to be in there long. You're just going to give them your clothes. You're going to go get your clothes. You're going to give your money. You're going to walk out. Learn to strike up a conversation. See how good you are at expressing yourself in that short, low risk conversation. Maybe it's with the cashier at the supermarket. Some of us avoid the cashiers and we would get in the pay, the self checkout. Stop getting in the self checkout lane just for us, just for a moment, but get in the lane with us, a cashier. Listen, it is a low risk, short time frame situation. Get in there, and yes, Jay Song for you. Put in the sweat equity because you're worth it. Do the work. You want to become better at expressing yourself? Do the work. Do the work. And I promise you, I hope you will come. If you don't thank me for it, I'm fine with that. But thank yourself for putting in the work. You all do me a favor. Do me a favor. Keep maintaining community. Let's maintain connectivity. Let's keep building community. Keep your heads up. Keep your hopes up. Stay safe. Stay sane. Tell somebody that Cutler is talking about some stuff on that channel. Go and tell somebody. If you didn't catch the live broadcast, and catch the replay. And the next time the man is on, do me a favor. Come on and let's talk to Color. I'll see you all later. Have a great evening. I'll see you the next time. Know this, that from my heart to yours, there is and always will be so much love. Thank you all for hanging in there with me. I'll see you the next time. Good night.